Oops.
All right. Hello, Michael.
Hey, sorry.
It's
Sorry.
quite okay. Quite okay. It's good to have you.
Good to have you. Good to see you.
Good to see you
Sorry.
too. So
Just
let's see
a
what
cup
we
of
have.
tea. I didn't realize what time it was.
I know.
Sorry.
I figured that was how I was catching you, so I'm glad I could remind you. And welcome to week 7. So we'll take a look
Hi.
today as what is it that we're really doing? What is the whole point today? And we are going to take a good peek at that.
Great.
So today we're going to look at the 7th week agenda, which is, module for week 1. The course is set up, the Reset to Freedom course is set up in 4 modules with 2 weeks of each module. And so this is the 4th module, week 1, and the second from the last weekend. Today's date happens to be March 5th, 2026, but if you're watching this after that, that's okay. And not only is it okay, I just am very honored and very pleased that you got to this level of this very it's a moving course. It's a course meant to transition or transform the way that you look at life in such a way as to give you access to freedom that you didn't know you were missing, access to peace, access to even joy, access to like self-discovery and self-awareness. This is what we're intending to do. So today the slides are a little bit more colorful. I took advantage of creating slides that were using some of the techniques that are available in technology for a reason, because today we're also going to talk about what next week is, and next week takes advantage of technology as we look at some of the, shades of things to come in future courses. First, we're going to talk about reset. Now, first of all, let's find out where Michael is with everything. Michael, I know you were kind of stumbled in, but I didn't really check in with you, and I just want to make sure that you're in a good space and that things are well, and you're right here with us. Where are you?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. All
Just
right.
just just getting set for the broadcast. Sorry. But
All right. Beautiful.
absolutely fine. Thanks. Yep.
Beautiful. And so when we look at reset, you probably remember what these 5 things are by now. Release, examine, simplify, embody, and transform. And let's take a peek at what this is. The first one, release. This is something that we can actually utilize not only if we're psychiatric patients or not only if we're taking care of people with psychiatric conditions or psychiatric diagnoses, but really we can use this for anything. We can pause and pivot, and then on the process of that, release, letting go of the labels. Some people call themselves Republicans or Democrats or Southerners or a religion or a certain sect or nationality. And I'm asking you to consider letting go of those labels too, because those two are also very restrictive and don't allow you to access all of life in its multiple dimensions, clearly greater than at least the 3-dimensional world that we're presently living in. So, releasing, letting go of labels, freeing ourselves from the emotional identity constraints of our diagnoses and labels and external labels, and then allowing ourselves from that space to put something else in there, which can be the discovery of our authentic, genuine, true, honest core self. The second letter in the acronym for reset is E. And this one is for examine, exploring patterns that may have pre existed, identifying and reflecting on those beliefs, limiting belief frequently, and those behaviors which weren't serving you any longer, and inherited narratives that you've had in the past that may or may not be serving you, but have influenced your thoughts and actions in a way that have left you maybe a little less than totally free to choose what's really here in any given moment. So after releasing, we examine. And then once we've done that, we're given a capacity to simplify. And in that process, we're talking about eliminating clutter. And what I mean by that is removing the distractions, removing the things that have developed over time that have become unhelpful habits, and then by doing that, creating mental and emotional, perhaps spiritual and physical space for healing and clarity at a very high level. And then we look at the next set of letters. The fourth letter is another E, and this time it means embody. Showing up authentically, expressing our reclaimed truth now that we've rediscovered and reclaimed who we really are, with a new level or an old level of rediscovery of confidence through our words, through our actions, through our doing and being, and our presence in our daily life. And finally, we look at the fifth letter of the acronym, and the fifth letter is a T, and T stands for transform, which is pretty much guaranteed if you take this on. If you're willing to do the first four, the fifth one is sort of the slide. This is just what naturally occurs. Now, can I promise you're going to get there? No, I certainly can't promise. But once you have released, and once you have examined, and once you have simplified and then embodied, it's pretty likely that you'll have a form of transformation where you realize that, in fact, you're much more in control of your life in a sovereign way, in an authentic way, and in a way where you have agency over how you live and how the world actually occurs to you. So we take that ownership of our healing journey by shaping our life with a new level of sovereignty and intention. And you probably thought this would be the next thing that would come, and we're here again. So this is the sovereignty statement. Very colorful slide. I appreciate that. And Michael, I'm going to ask you to recite it for us, or to own it, to generate it, to make it part of your being. So please go ahead.
I am a sovereign being. I'm fully responsible for my life, my choices, my healing. I do not assign blame to this program, its creator, or any participant for what I experience here or in life. I walk this path as a free and accountable human.
Thank you. And I too
Mhm.
will join you. Sovereignty statement. I am a sovereign being. I am fully responsible for my life, my choices, and my healing. I do not assign blame to this program, its creator, or any participant for what I experience here or in life. I walk this path as a truly free and accountable human being. Thank you for sharing. Anything that's coming up for you, Michael, at this point?
No, you've been recapping what we've been talking about, and I'm with you.
Okay, good, good, good. Now we're going to talk about those folders. I don't have today um, the QR codes, but I do have the where you can access it with the little bit.ly here, https://bit.ly /49GM capital W capital U capital B, or I'm sorry, capital W capital U small b, as you can see on the slide. And you can also join the school community. We've had a little bit of a boost this week of people joining that community, people who are ready to share, people who are ready to be with this process, people who are ready to learn how to be more authentic, how to be more aligned, how to be more in tune and more harmonically resonant with the world that they're living in. And that's what the Reset Circle is really about. And we talk about the Moss Method, we talk about Welcome to Humanity, and we talk about the need to connect, human connection at the heart of all healing. This you can find in the Reset Circle, and you can find partners there who are deeply interested in you or in hearing from you anyhow, and maybe even sharing with you some of their trials, tribulations, or tips and tricks that they've learned over time to become more powerful, more free, more joyous, more peaceful, with greater self-expression and greater freedom. And this is what we're going to look at. Now, this is sort of already taking the 7th week into a review. And that's because there's a little teaser coming for next week when we talk about how technology might even play a role on the back end of learning how to reset. Because the future is coming at us, right? The future is a tsunami of AI and technology that's coming at us seemingly faster and faster every day, very powerful, disorienting, potentially intimidating. And it has become part of life, something to learn how to deal with. But for these 7 weeks, we've been really focused on the basic idea of resetting our human life, resetting who we've been up until now so that we can be open and honestly available for what's coming around the corner. So when we look at this transformation that has already occurred, these are some questions that I'd like you to consider taking on for us. Number 1, what is the biggest shift you've experienced in these weeks, if any? Number 2, which part of reset, R-E-S-E-T, resonated most deeply with you? Number 3, what are you still working on, or what are you noticing on the back end, or maybe launched or hatched by this course of something that you want to continue to explore and continue to integrate? Number four, how about your relationship to diagnoses and labels? Michael, I believe we've talked about this nearly every week. You've been doing this a while, and most of this is resonant with how you have already seen things, but maybe there's something you can bring up here. And then finally, what does sovereignty really mean to you? When you give up on blaming the world or blaming the other person or finger pointing in any way and get that you're responsible for all the things you do, all the things you say, all the ways you be, and in fact, how you incorporate or respond or react to the world as it occurs to you. So, Michael, I'm going to ask you to pick any two of these questions and maybe give us a little word of where you are or where you think you are as a function of the course, or maybe a function of the 8 weeks outside of the course, 7 weeks, or whatever is coming to mind for you. So please take over the mic and let's see what you got.
Well, I, as you alluded to, I've been working as a therapist for many years and a psychologist, and so um, this what's new about what you're doing is the way it's framed and the framework and the programmatic aspect of it and so forth. And so I would say that so in some ways this is stirring up things that I've been thinking about for a long time. But but what this part of what this points out to me is that um, for instance, you mentioned that you used the term undoctoring, and I think doctors can undoctor too,
For
and
sure.
can stand to, and so I found myself working, without just speaking in very broad terms, I found myself working with a client who happened to mention ADHD, which comes up all the time with the population of
Oh, yeah.
people that I work with. And although I don't or do instrumental kind of work, I do general, you could call it humanistic or psychodynamic therapy. So we don't focus on those things, but I actually found myself, and it might be partly influenced by what we've been talking about, I found myself more explicitly saying, well, I can see where you're thinking about ADHD in this context. That may or may not be relevant, but I don't think that's what the problem is here. Or I didn't say that's what the problem is,
Yeah.
but sort of I think maybe more explicitly speaking to the fact that I think that there was an element where my client was possibly wanting to frame something in terms of her ADHD, and I found myself maybe pushing back against that a little bit.
Mm.
And I think that may be partly influenced by the attention that we've been paying to this here.
That's great. I don't know if I've mentioned it in this course before, but I think I might have. But it's probably due now as well. In my experience, and I've talked to a number of doctors actually in the last week, inviting them to the summer retreat, and we may have a few that are coming, so that's pretty great. In my experience, psychiatry is the only subspecialty that I'm aware of. If when people come in to be seen or to get evaluated, if you tell them that they're okay, they actually get furious.
Good point. Good point.
There's very little subspecialty. If you go to a cardiologist and he tells you okay, you're not going to get angry. If you go to an ophthalmologist and he tells you okay, you're not going to get upset. If you go to a orthopedist and he tells you okay, it's kind of good news, right? If you go to your general practitioner and your checkup says you're okay, you're really good with it. If you come to a mental health professional and he tells you you're okay, you just wonder why the hell you even came to see him in the first place. You're like, what do you mean, man? Why would I come see you to learn that I was okay? Because people step into a mental health evaluation already certain in their mind's eye that there's something wrong with them. They're not coming to see if there's something wrong with them. They're coming to see what is wrong with them. They already have this very ubiquitous human notion, a component of the general human condition as I see it, which is each and every one of us sees ourselves as being different, as being odd, as being weird, as being, a different kind of person than the others. And we like to actually call that because we think there's something wrong with us. And you could almost make a case that if you think there's something wrong with you, it's kind of pathognomonic for being a basically normal human being. right? So
Yep.
people really want to carry on with their diagnosis. It serves a purpose, as we talked before. One of the things that a diagnosis does is it gives you an alibi. It gives you an outsourcing. You can say stuff all of a sudden like, well, that wasn't me, that was my BAD, or that wasn't me, that was my ADHD, that wasn't me, I'm on the spectrum, that wasn't me, I have PTSD, that was me, I have bipolar disorder. And
Right.
once you say that, you have now outsourced responsibility for your life to a theoretical kind of manufactured condition that was created for you very conveniently to relinquish responsibility for the parts of your life you're not feeling very good about. Now, that's not true with everybody's diagnosis. It's not true with every single person. I certainly don't mean it to be derogatory, but here's the real truth, Michael. If you want to take responsibility for all the mistakes that I made today, and I could actually pass them on to you, and so that I could say that wasn't me, that was Michael being my dude. If I was able to do that, I would do it in a second. Who wants to actually hold all the clumsiness, all the blaming, all the shaming, all the guilting that takes place inside of this human condition? It's pretty painful to absorb it and embrace it. And it's much easier to say that it's happening to me and that somehow I don't have access to this embodiment, to the transformation that sits on the other side of releasing, examining, and simplifying. Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. Very good, very good. Well, I'm going to answer a question here. The biggest shift I've seen in these last 7 weeks for me is that I realize how deeply this work means to me, and how entrenched it is in who I've been and who I now get to be. And I often am faced with a slippery slope to become or to to get myself back on board, to become more conventional, more traditional in my approach, give people diagnoses, give people treatment plan, give people medication. And when I feel that, I can sort of feel that that's not really aligned with my soul. For me, as I teach this course, and I'm, not stuttering and not hiding back from anything, I realize that I'm actually proud to have kept this truth in my ecosystem over this 4.5 decades, so that I can teach it at this point in my life as somebody on the back end, anyways, of their career. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
Now, we've had 3 people be at these meetings, but you can see that you're here. It says that you've been here since week 1. I mean, to be honest, to everybody here who might, if they've been listening, realize that you haven't been here every week,
Right.
that you've been here since week 1. And, as we sit here right now, Vanessa is in Spain, and she couldn't make it today. It would have been 4 in the morning. She thought about it. She told me she was going to try, and then she wrote me a couple hours ago saying she's not going to be able to make it. I understand. And Dingu, she thought she would be here. She wrote a very cool post on Facebook talking about being with us and having such a great time last week. But for whatever reason, she's not here either. But you are. And when we really talk about the success stories, this is where your voice matters. This is where, what has occurred to you maybe in the last 8 weeks, again, as a function of what's here. And in the best of worlds, I would have had you, deal with your accountability partner, which I think was assigned to be Vanessa back in the day, and be able to share with each other the hoops that you've gone through and the challenges, obstacles, and hurdles that you've either overcome or bypassed or went through during this process. And we'll have a moment to talk about that in just the next slides. These are some of the things that you may have been touched by during the course. I imagine you have, actually. Questioning the narrative, the narrative that you and I were both taught from 2 different modalities, you as a psychologist and me as a medical doctor / psychiatrist. The narratives that we've been given are questionable. Like, it doesn't mean that they're wrong or right. It just means that they're worthy of being examined, worthy of being investigated. And that's what we have done in the last 7 weeks. We start looking at, from a personal perspective, the things that we have inherited, the beliefs that we've inherited, not only as clinicians, but as human beings, as people who are, actually privy to the pain and suffering, as well as the discomfort and misery that can sometimes come from simply being a human being, trying to integrate all these things as they come to us. And not just those things out there that are obvious. Those are big. Those are real. There's some things happening in the world that are extraordinarily disturbing. And there's things happening in the community that are disturbing, and there might be things that are happening in your family or in your local city structure that are disturbing. And we can start looking at the beliefs that you've had up until now that have either, in some ways, promoted or provoked or prepared you to deal with those things, as well as the beliefs and truths that you had that are protective in nature. Perhaps you've already done your work inside of your own growth and development, where you have access to different ways of dealing with the world events, the circumstances and situations that are out there in the world that can be enough to trip us up. Like, it's always an invitation to be tripped up right now. You can be tripped up and no one's going to be surprised. No one's going to be angry with you. Everyone knows that it's really a place to stumble, bumble, and tumble right now, simply because the world is what it is. If we don't have the tools to hover over the top of that or find our way to a new sphere, then we get to live inside of this stratosphere, inside of this three-dimensional system, and pretend that that is reality. Then we get to feel the pain and suffering that comes with that, as well as all the disturbances. But we were able to really look at those beliefs for ourselves and perhaps even apply this stuff to people that we're caring for. And that is a real gift. And then we practice releasing labels and identifying constraints. So in the release, the first letter of the reset, we're talking about, all the things that we earmark ourselves for, all the things that we typecast ourselves for that aren't very real, in fact, and tend to actually limit how we get to walk through the world. So once I say that I am something, I now come with the identity which has built-in parameters to continue being that identity the way we see it. We did go over the elephant analogy back in the day, I believe. If a man or if a person comes into my office and tells me, I'm sorry for already giving up the punchline, but tells me that they have, gray mottled skin, they're a little bit too heavy, they got way too big a nose, they eat too many peanuts, they drink too much water, and they're a mess in a china shop. And I take out my DSM-17 and, put my eyeglasses on the tip of my nose and go looking through the book to figure out what the diagnosis is, and then slap the book closed and let them know that I found what the diagnosis is, and I let them know that they're an elephant. Well, then they're very excited. Very excited. Like, oh, that makes so much sense. I have all those criteria. I'm in. Let's go. But not only are they an elephant at that time, not only are they pleased that they've been given something that helps them relinquish responsibility for all the things that are going on, including their gray skin, their heavy weight, and eating and drinking too many peanuts and water, respectively. They walk out of the office, and once they get out in the streets, now they're looking for circuses and chains. Now they're looking for what an elephant looks for by their own expression. They've learned what an elephant is, and if I'm an elephant, I might as well find a circus. And that's how it rolls. And then, of course, there's the other sort of add-on that is if they come back next week and they say they got really big ears and they have a great memory, then I go through my book one time and I come back again, slap it closed, and let them know that they're elephant type 2. And they got a greater propensity. They're very special. It's only 5% of all elephants have elephant type 2. And now they walk out feeling special and different. And, you and I both know with that giggle that actually is not far from what happens in our office when we give people a diagnosis.
That's right.
So we've simplified our lives. This is the E, this is the S that comes with after the release and after the examination, simplifying our life and creating space for healing by moving things out of the way that are no longer serving us. And once we create that space like a socket in a tooth, then something else can go there that isn't the old tooth that we can actually grow and learn and develop and transform into. Then we look at embodying our authentic voice, because now, once we have all this in place, the opportunity exists to become this person, to live with this person, to be this person, to say the things you need to say, to not say the things you don't need to say, to represent yourself in an aligned way with your core values and your honest to goodness, authentic, generative self, your authentic, genuine self, such that you can resonate harmonically with other humans at the same frequency, and in that process, making yourself available for the healing that comes, the profound, really robust healing that comes when we connect with each other. Once you do that, you have now become an unhealer, and in many ways, you have taken on the UnDoctor edicts, the UnDoctor, we'll call them undoctrines, And with that, have now become one who can heal without the need to go back to school and become a healer. I promise you that when you learn how to connect with a closer than average frequency with another human being, you will find that you heal others just in your presence, and you will also find that you become healed in that same exchange. We have asked ourselves to take ownership of our transformation. On the back end of the RESE, we get a transformation. And once we get that, we actually get to walk. And it takes bravery, it takes courage, because it is disorienting, because we've been living inauthentically up until now. So when that happens, that we're able to take ownership of our transformation, we get to really welcome being a new person, being the person we're becoming rather than the person that we have become. And that's very, very real and very honest, and in some ways is the essence of the transformation that we're circling around at this point. Then you get to show up week after week by sharing with partners, by doing journaling, by doing your meditation, by doing your gratitude, watching your nutrition, watching your sleep patterns, by taking care of yourself, by walking with pets, by getting out in nature, by finding your spirituality, by really making sure that you're drinking enough, by doing some kind of movements, typically in the world of holistic movements of yoga or the non-combative martial arts from the Far East. And with that, we get to show up week after week with the newfound development, the newfound growth, the newfound transformation that allows us to live a few beats off of the default life that we've been living up to now, including getting rid of things that are no longer welcome and replacing them with things that we have rediscovered for ourselves that are more aligned with our core values. And that's what's happening here. You have just become, again, or underlined, or emphasized, or amplified the author of your life. You are a sovereign being. You are the author of your life. You're the one who has agency. You have the joystick, and how you live the next minute literally has nothing to do with all the habits and all the behaviors you've had up until now. When you can separate yourself and realize that you're free to say, be, and do whoever you want to be as of this moment, thereby leaving all sorts, maybe even thousands of opportunities available to say, be, and do something that you've never said, been, or done before, then you get to realize that you're truly the author of your life. Now, it's not that simple. It's not that easy. If I want to, I can't turn Italian today. But one thing I can do is I can actually separate myself from the sensations and the thoughts and the feelings that I otherwise link to being necessary in order for me to be me. Once I separate myself from the feelings, the thoughts, the sensations, and I realize that I am not any of those, I'm only a housing for those things to occur, that leaves me free and easy and free and available to take on life differently than I have up until now, and gives me freedom to become someone that I have not displayed myself as up until now. So my sovereignty is not naturally given to me. I need to work with it, and when I do work with it, I then get to reclaim it. Anything from you here, Michael?
Yeah, I mean the part of this that's really ringing the loudest for me is and this relates to the last slide that you had too, is the part about releasing identity, because that's I think I mentioned before, not to bring in outside practices, but I've been spending a lot of time with Ram Dass in the last few months,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, you were talking about, and one of our classmates here is a yogi, and so forth, and often they seem to come at this practice from the body side, and I tend to come at it more from the mind and emotion side. But where they come together is you are, releasing something, to use your term, releasing identity. It's like that's an ongoing process. It's not just your clinical identity, it's as you're saying here, it's your identity in terms of what you do, not what you think you are, and
Exactly.
so I find that even at my, relatively advanced age, I find that just like, as you said, just putting a little mental energy into, or mindfulness into, that process of contemplating, gee, is this the only how much of what I'm stuck in this minute really is just a function of this whole arbitrary set of things, which I call my identity.
Mm-hmm.
Or more importantly, don't call my identity when that's really how I'm behaving. So,
Exactly. Perfect. That is so great. Well, very well said. And that's exactly right. The identity has restrictive capacities that we otherwise might not notice, meaning
right.
once we take on an identity, it's actually very limiting. It makes the road like a 1 or 2 lane road rather than really getting that we have the wherewithal to go anywhere within a 360-degree globe, even. Rather than the 2 or 3 lanes that our identity tends to typecast or um, corner us into being. Very cool. So I invite you. I'm not sure if you're a member of school, Michael, but if you are, I love that. And if you're not, I invite you to consider coming into the school district. The school.com/welcome to humanity is how you get there. And although it's been a little bit dormant up until now, my intention is kind of wake it up and put people back on their feet. They're there for a reason. There's a little more than 300 people there waiting for us. And, if no one talks, then no one talks. And these people have not, in some ways, it's been quiet enough so that people are treating it like it's a library in many ways. But we have some new members who are wishing and wanting to be a little more active. We're starting a meditation group tomorrow morning. I've had this a few other times in the past. So at 6:30 Pacific time tomorrow, and then at 7 in the morning every day except Friday moving forward, we're going to have a half-hour meditation. This is a Pacific time. So if you're out there in a different time, please just translate it to the Pacific time. And then the link, it's a Zoom link, and there's a really cool meditation that I can walk us through and often do. And this is a space where you get to separate yourself from your thoughts and your feelings and sensations early in the morning, leaving yourself the capacity to be a little bit freer to deal with the day's challenges. The Reset Circle partnerships, we've talked about that. Initially, that was you and Vanessa. I'm quite sure that Vanessa would be deeply interested in continuing with you if you were able to forge that relationship and actually be accountability buddies. And in that case, we practice the Moss Method together. The Moss Method is the 20 things that we talked about that are time-tested and proven, only compiled by me. I actually didn't invent any of them. I kind of just took them from the places where decades or centuries or millennia, people have found them to be effective. And then I put them into a big list, and they don't include diagnosis as a part of it, and they don't include any kind of treatment plan. There is no medications involved. You don't have to go to a pharmacy. You don't have to be authorized. All you really need to do is be a human, be willing to listen, be willing to understand that maybe you don't know everything, but also maybe that there's nothing actually wrong with you. And then step into the Moss Method and get yourself separated from the default systems that sometimes forge an identity that may, as Michael just said so beautifully, may not align with who you really are. Now we start looking at week 8 and what that is. And we're talking about co-creation coaching. So this co-creation coaching is a very cool thing, and I can't wait to introduce it to you next week. We'll really talk about new pathways for growth that are now becoming available. So here we go with the co-creation coaching. Technology assists, and then humans decide. So next Thursday, we're going to explore a new extension of the UnDoctor principles. What we're going to do is something called co-creation coaching, and take a look at it. What I have noticed recently, and I think everyone is at least dealing with this, I know that when I have problems, when I'm concerned, when I have questions, when I need some assistance, when I need some consultation, when I need a shoulder to cry on, I need somebody to reaffirm me or maybe redirect me, I'm looking for like the very best. I'm looking, is there a therapist out there, is a coach, a friend, a brother, is there, one of my parents, or is there an expert? And when AI first started being something as an LLM, I always thought, it doesn't know how to be human. It's sort of how it was introduced. It doesn't know how to be compassionate. It doesn't know how to be active. It doesn't know how to understand. It doesn't have emotions. It can't really pull this off. It's not going to convince me it's a human or has human-like skills. Or maybe I'm really looking for superlative consultation skills. However, and I say this as deeply surprised as anyone out there, I have used a few of my LLMs when I was in trouble, using very well-focused prompt engineering, making sure that I'm asking the right questions at the right time and providing the kind of context necessary to explore whatever my concerns or whatever my shortcomings or um, mistakes that I've made, or difficulties I'm having in relationship or management of relationships with my LLM, only to get answers and discussions that literally are richer and reach far deeper than anything I've ever had with some of the greatest psychologists and psychiatrists that I've had the honor to meet in this lifetime. There's a lot of reasons for that, but my goodness, the idea that it has the capacity to at least consider or pretend, because most people are considering and pretending anyways, what it's like to be compassionate, what it's like to share, what it's like to listen, what it's like to be curious, what it's like to be present. But what AI brings is they didn't have a bad day with their wife earlier in the day. They didn't get drunk last night and are somehow hungover. They're not sick and tired at work because they're not deficient due to their own lives, and at the same time they're there to resonate at a level that for me was so extraordinary in my interchange. It's like, oh my God, if I ever met a therapist who could speak to me like this, I would just go to them. Like I would immediately sign up for them. Like, it would, no cost would prevent me. And then I realized that by teaching people how to do that, how to create a relationship with a standard model, an AGI, an LLM, whatever it is that we're doing, we can actually move this needle forward and helping us to actually reset. However, that's enough said about that, because tonight we're going to look at you. And when I say you, I'm including you and Ding You and anyone else who's watching this who has gone through the first 6 lessons and is here with us, and look at indeed what you have accomplished up until now, with this just being a simple teaser of what's out there in the near future. So, with that said, it's time to read the sovereignty statement again, because ultimately that's what we've created in this course. That's why we said it every day. And there's something about really just putting a stake in the ground. So, this time I'm going to read it, and I'll have you read it right after me. The sovereignty statement: I am a sovereign being. I am fully responsible for my life, my choices, and my healing. I do not assign blame to this program, its creator, or any participant or non participant for what I experience here or in life. I walk this path as a free and accountable human being, and I am capable and responsible and competent to do so. Michael, it's on you.
I am a sovereign being. I'm fully responsible for my life, my choices, and my healing. I do not assign blame to this program, its creator, or any participant for what I experience here or in life. I walk this path as a free and accountable human.
Fantastic. Beautiful. And before we actually close for the day, I am going to stop sharing of the slides for just a moment. Actually, we'll go to this slide and then we'll come out. So basically, thank you for showing up, everyone. Thank you for the questioning. Thank you for reclaiming your sovereignty as me as a witness. Thank you for using whatever you found here or whatever you didn't find here to make the steps forward to give yourself a little bit more, even 1%, 2% more freedom and joy, 2% more access to peace, access to sovereignty and agency, access to self-expression. Thank you, thank you, thank you for utilizing this course to get that done. And oh yeah, we do have another week together. That week is going to be very exciting as we explore how can we really move forward using the tools that are already coming at us like a tsunami. So with that said, I'm going to end the slides. Come right back here and ask you, what do what's here? In closing, what are you noticing? What do you want to say to the people who are listening? You obviously are in the founding group. You're in the group coming out of the gates. You've been here. You've saw from the beginning to the end. And you've learned or not learned or whatever you've got your experience. What would you like to say to kind of give us an overview of where you are at the 7th week of this 8-week course?
Well, I would just like to say that the the more exposure to this and the more it just sort of rings like a bell that you got to actually do this stuff. You know, you actually
Sure.
have to And you mentioned this, I think, last week. You got to come up with some kind of broadly speaking practice. And it's probably going to be, it's, well, not probably, it's got to be different for everybody.
Exactly.
But you have to do it, and and the insight is the insight is the beginning, but the practice is really the meat. And so, yeah, to me, always a learning experience involved with, okay, exactly, because there's always a danger I find, even in teaching or being a student or being a client or being a psychologist, there can be a danger that that too much repetition of something, then you just become too familiar with it,
Hmm.
and that can be a danger too. Um, like I remember once a psychiatrist friend of mine said, had been taught something in med school, in psychiatry residency, what essentially is a buzzword, which I try to avoid. And I'm sure you've heard it, and we all have, which is facts are not feelings,
You're
I
right.
mean, feelings are not facts.
Right.
So, and it's such a powerful thought. It really is a very powerful thought. I mean, when I first heard of that, I thought, that's something that is one of those cases where a little, buzzword really focuses a lot of attention, and it needs to, and I go back to it all the time. But it's gotta happen at the right time, and it's gotta open up your mind. It can't just
Yes.
be a mantra.
That's great. And that's where the second E comes in, right? Because
Right.
the distance between release, examine, and
Embody it.
simplify is embody. And when you take
Right.
that, now you've actually taken some steps, some actions that are considered for that.
Right. Right. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Exactly. And if you don't do that, if you stop at S, if it's just going to stay in that pinball machine of your head and just bounce around, then really you're not going to get what's really here with respect to transformation. So you have to step off the cliff. You actually have to join and do things that you otherwise haven't done up until now. And it's not that hard because it isn't. Because your choices are numerous and um, approaching infinite for who do you get to be and who you get to how you get to experience life from this point forward when you move the things out of the way that have been in the way of you being genuine and authentic. So fantastic work. Okay, Michael. Well, I guess we're at the end of week 7 here. I do have a really cool week 8. I invite you to join us next week so you can see what's here. I'm so interested in your input. And in the meantime, I can't quite give you your graduation certificate until next week. But as of now, thank you so much for being back and being enthusiastic and being awake, aware, and alert, and for being present and being a contribution today. So much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And for everyone else, thank you for being here. And for Vanessa and Dingu, we missed you tonight. I hope that you're watching this and enjoying it. And hopefully, the both of you will be back and maybe even bring a friend or two for week 8. If you bring a friend or two for week 8, they'll have a good time. It's not a cumulative course as week 8 goes, anyways. It's just something that I think you can feel free to bring a friend. They'll be well taken care of and probably learn a lot next week. So, with that said, thank you, everyone. Thanks for letting me lead. Thanks for being here. And thank you for being you, every piece of you, including the parts that you're not proud of. And we'll see you all on the next week. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks. See you next week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.